Imagine two friends, Alex and Sam. Same age, same job, same salary. They graduated college together, started working together, and honestly, they live pretty similar lives. But 25 years from now, one of them will retire with over $1 million more than the other. Not because one of them earned more money, not because one of them got a lucky stock tip, not because one of them was born into wealth. The difference comes down to one small decision that Alex made and Sam didn't. A decision so small, so easy to overlook that most people don't even realize they're making it wrong. And here's the strange part. If I told you right now what that decision was, you'd probably say that's it? That's the whole secret? Because it sounds too simple to matter. But that's exactly why almost everyone makes this mistake. It doesn't feel like a mistake in the moment. It feels like patience. It feels like being responsible. It feels smart. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what this mistake is, why your brain is practically wired to make it, and what you can do starting today to make sure you're not the one losing $1 million without even noticing. So let's go back to Alex and Sam. At 25, both of them get their first real paycheck. Sam looks at the numbers and thinks, I'm barely covering rent and groceries right now. Investing is for later when I actually have money to spare. That sounds completely reasonable, right? Nobody wants to invest money they might need for an emergency. So Sam waits. Not forever, just until things feel more stable. A promotion happens. A raise happens. Life happens. 10 years go by. Sam is 35 now, finally feels financially comfortable and starts investing $200 a month into a retirement account. Alex, on the other hand, made a different choice at 25. Alex didn't have extra money either. In fact, Alex was in a very similar financial position to Sam. But Alex decided to start investing just $50 a month. Not 200, 50. An amount so small it barely changed anything about daily life. No fancy budgeting, no drastic sacrifices, just $50 redirected into an investment account instead of sitting in a checking account. Over time, as Alex's income grew, that $50 slowly became $100, then $150, then $200, matching pace with Sam's eventual contributions by the time they were both 35. So from age 35 onward, Alex and Sam are contributing the exact same amount. Same investment, same market, same everything. Here's the question. When they both retire at 65, who has more money? Most people's gut instinct says they'd be pretty close, since Sam eventually caught up and matched Alex's contributions for 30 straight years. But that instinct is wrong. Alex retires with significantly more than $1 million ahead of Sam, not because Alex contributed more money overall. In fact, over their lifetimes, Alex and Sam put in fairly similar total amounts once you add it all up. The difference isn't how much money went in, the difference is when it went in. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. We treat the starting line like it doesn't matter much, as long as we eventually get moving. We think, I'll catch up later. I'll invest more once I earn more. It feels logical. It feels safe. But it is, without exaggeration, one of the most expensive assumptions a person can make with their financial life. To understand why 10 years of delay can cost more than $1 million, we need to talk about something most people have heard of, but very few people actually feel in their gut. It's called compound growth. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Imagine you're rolling a small snowball down a snowy hill. At the top of the hill, the snowball is tiny. As it rolls, it picks up more snow and it gets slightly bigger. Then, because it's bigger, it picks up even more snow with each rotation. Then, because it's even bigger than that, it picks up more again. By the time it reaches the bottom of the hill, that tiny starting snowball has turned into something massive. Now here's the important part. The size of the snowball at the bottom depends heavily on how long the hill is. A short hill produces a decent-sized snowball. A long hill produces an enormous one. The snowball doesn't grow in a straight line. It grows faster and faster the longer it rolls. Because it's not just picking up new snow, it's picking up snow on top of the snow it already picked up. Money invested in the market behaves exactly like that snowball. When you invest money, it doesn't just sit there. It earns returns. And here's the part that changes everything. Those returns then earn their own returns. Then those new returns earn returns too. Your money isn't just growing, it's growing on top of its own growth. Let's put real numbers to this, using very simple round figures just to see the shape of what's happening. Say you invest $100, and it grows at an average rate of about 10% a year, which is roughly the long-term historical average of the stock market as a whole. After 1 year, that $100 becomes $110. Not very exciting yet. After year 2, you don't just earn $10 again. You earn 10% on $110, which is $11. So now you have $121. That extra $1 might look pointless, but that $1 is the entire secret of wealth building. That's the snowball picking up extra snow because it's already bigger than it was. Now stretch that out. After 10 years, that same $100 left completely untouched grows to around $259. After 20 years, it becomes around $673. After 30 years, it becomes over $1,700. Look at those jumps closely. From year 0 to year 10, it grew by about $159. But from year 20 to year 30, that same original $100 grew by over $1,000. The growth is barely happening in the early years, and then it explodes in the later years. This is why the timing of when you start matters so much more than how much you start with. The first years you invest aren't really about the money you put in. They're about buying time for compounding to work in the background. Money invested early gets to go through many, many cycles of growing on top of its own growth. Money invested late simply doesn't have enough time left to catch up. No matter how much of it you put in, this is exactly what happened with Alex and Sam. Alex's early dollars, even though they were small, had 10 extra years to compound. Those early $50 contributions from Alex's 20s were still growing, quietly, invisibly, in the background for decades, long after Alex had forgotten about them. Sam's dollars, even though they were larger once they started, never got those extra 10 years. They simply didn't have enough time on the hill to become a big snowball. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the real mistake isn't actually about money. It's about how our brains are wired to think about time and reward. Psychologists have a concept called present bias. It basically means humans are naturally wired to overvalue immediate comfort and undervalue future rewards, especially when that future reward feels abstract or far away. Your brain treats $50 in your pocket today as far more real and important than a much larger amount of money that only exists as a hypothetical 30 years from now. This made a lot of sense for most of human history. If you were a hunter-gatherer thousands of years ago, waiting for a delayed reward could literally get you killed. Immediate needs, food, safety, shelter, mattered far more than distant, uncertain future outcomes. Your brain evolved to prioritize now over later, because for most of human existence, later wasn't guaranteed. But that same wiring becomes a serious problem in a modern world with long-term financial systems like retirement accounts and investing, where the biggest rewards are specifically designed to show up decades later. Your brain is essentially using ancient survival software to make decisions about a financial tool it was never designed to understand. This is why Sam's decision to wait felt so reasonable. Sam's brain wasn't being lazy or foolish. Sam's brain was doing exactly what it evolved to do, prioritizing immediate financial comfort over an abstract future benefit. The problem is that in investing, the abstract future benefit is often worth exponentially more than the short-term comfort of waiting. There's a second psychological trap happening here, too, something researchers sometimes call the someday mindset. This is the belief that motivation, income, or life stability will eventually reach a certain magic threshold where starting will finally feel easy and obvious. I'll start investing once I get that promotion. I'll start once I pay off this credit card. I'll start once life calms down. Here's the uncomfortable truth about that mindset. Life rarely calms down. There's always a new expense, a new goal, a new reason that feels urgent and important right now. The people who build wealth aren't usually the people who waited for perfect conditions. They're the people who started small, before they felt ready, and let time do the heavy lifting. There's actually a name for this specific bias, too, called hyperbolic discounting, which is a fancy way of describing something very human. We don't discount future rewards evenly. We discount them extremely harshly when they're close to us in decision-making terms, but the discount rate softens the further out we imagine it. In simple words, the difference between invest today and invest tomorrow feels huge to your brain, even though logically those 2 days are basically identical. But the difference between invest in 10 years and invest in 11 years feels almost meaningless, even though that gap can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost compounding. This is exactly why so many people fall into Sam's pattern without realizing it. Each individual day of waiting feels like a tiny, harmless decision. I'll start next month. But those tiny, harmless decisions stack up silently over years. And by the time someone realizes how much time has passed, the cost of that delay has already grown into something enormous, thanks to the very same compounding effect that could have worked in their favor. So the real $1 million mistake isn't about not knowing how to invest, or not understanding the stock market, or not having enough money. The real mistake is letting a psychological bias, one that's been hardwired into humans for thousands of years, quietly steal decades of compounding time without you even noticing it's happening. So what does this actually mean for you, practically, starting today? First, understand that the amount you start with matters far less than people assume. This is genuinely liberating information, because most people avoid investing simply because they don't feel like they have enough money to make it worthwhile. But as we saw with Alex, $50 a month starting early can outperform a much larger amount that starts late. The goal isn't to wait until you can invest a meaningful amount. The goal is to start with whatever amount feels manageable right now, even if it feels almost too small to matter. Second, understand that consistency beats intensity. It's tempting to think you need to make one big, dramatic financial move to fix your future. But wealth building in reality looks more like slowly, repeatedly, boringly putting small amounts of money to work over a very long period of time. The boring version wins almost every single time against the version where someone waits for the perfect moment to make a big move. Third, try to make your future self feel less abstract. One reason present bias is so powerful is that our future self genuinely feels like a stranger to our brain. Some researchers have found that when people think about their future selves, brain activity looks similar to when they think about a completely different person. This is part of why it's so easy to prioritize today's comfort over a future you can barely picture. A simple way to fight this is to get concrete. Picture yourself specifically at 50, at 60, at retirement. Picture what daily life might look like with financial security compared to without it. The more real and specific that future person becomes in your mind, the easier it becomes to make decisions on their behalf today. Fourth, automate the decision so your brain doesn't get a vote every single month. Since we know the brain is wired to favor immediate comfort over long-term reward, the smartest move is to remove the moment of decision entirely. Setting up an automatic transfer into an investment account means you're not relying on willpower or motivation every month. You're relying on a system you built once during a moment of clarity that continues working even on days when your present bias would have talked you out of it. Fifth, resist the urge to wait for a specific dollar amount before starting. There is no magic number where investing suddenly becomes worth it. The version of you that starts with $50 today is, in almost every realistic scenario, better off than the version of you that waits to start with $500 in 5 years. Time is doing most of the work here, not the size of the contribution. And finally, remind yourself regularly that small, boring, consistent actions are the entire engine behind almost every real-world example of long-term wealth building. It's rarely a dramatic story. It's rarely a lucky break. It's mostly just time, consistency, and starting earlier rather than later. Let's go back to Alex and Sam one final time. Sam isn't a bad planner. Sam isn't financially irresponsible. Sam simply made the same completely human decision that most people make, prioritizing today's comfort over tomorrow's abstract, distant benefit. And Alex isn't some financial genius either. Alex just happened to start small 10 years earlier, without realizing at the time how much that single decision would eventually be worth. That's what makes this mistake so easy to fall into, and honestly, so easy to fix. It's not about complicated strategy. It's not about timing the market perfectly or picking the right stock. It's about recognizing that time itself is the most valuable asset you have in building wealth, and every day you wait is a day that asset quietly slips away. So here's the real question worth sitting with. If a difference this massive can come from something as small as starting 10 years earlier, what is waiting actually costing you right now, today, in this very moment you're watching this? Because someday always sounds like a plan. But someday, more often than not, quietly turns into never. And the version of you 30 years from now is the one who ends up paying for that delay. The good news is, unlike Sam, you now know exactly what that mistake looks like from the inside, which means you get to choose, starting today, whether you're going to be the one who waited or the one who started.